Have you ever felt that you're living in your own world where no one around you can hear what's going on in your head? In this verse, the Guru is asking us to think about what are we listening to at every moment. Verse 37 begins with, "O ears of mine, the Eternal has sent you here to listen. The Eternal has sent you to this body to listen, so listen to the true message. Hearing this, the mind and body blossom, and the tongue enjoys the flavor. The invisible truth is glorious, its status cannot be described. Says Nanak, hear the nectar-like name, become pure, the Eternal has sent you here to listen." It reminds me of my own childhood where I've always had this experience of hearing ringing in my ears. And I remember from a very young age, I would go from one doctor to another. I would be taken to have these various hearing tests. And as a child, I was never actually told what this problem is. I was never told what this was called. And it was only in adult years that I actually learnt that this has got a name and it's called tinnitus. But what I realized that even as I've grown up now, it's something that's always there, but I'm able to ignore it. It doesn't have a huge impact on my life. But when I focus on it, when I think about it, it can actually become quite loud. And so what I've understood is that I'm experiencing something that no one else is experiencing. I'm able to hear something that no one else can. So for everybody else, it isn't real. But for me, it's very real. And what I've learned is that we're all living our own experience of life. We're all hearing our own things. We're all interpreting life in our own way. And what might be very real to us could be completely unreal to someone else. And in this verse, this is what the Guru is saying. "Es sarvanhu mayriho, saachai sunne no pathaa-ay. O ears of mine, the Eternal has sent you here to listen. Saachai sunne no pathaa-ay, sareer laa-ay, sunhu sat banee. The Eternal has sent you to this body to listen, so listen to the true message." Now think about these last few verses of Anand Sahib as Guru giving you very practical daily affirmations to help you reprogram your thinking. The Guru wants you to remember the following at every moment. My ears were made to hear divine words. My purpose today is to hear divinity at each moment. So what does this practically look like on a day-to-day basis? On a very simple understanding, we need to start now evolving our behaviors. The Guru is saying, change what you listen to. Change and stop listening to things that are negative, things that are of a cruel nature, where we're criticizing other people, where we're using harsh or evil words. Think about what you're watching, what you're listening to at every moment. Is something that you're listening to inciting hatred towards another person, towards a group of people? And so what the Guru is trying to do is to get you to adopt a very strict warrior code for your mind, and one that rejects criticism, one that does not think about criticizing other people. And this can actually be quite difficult to do in practice, especially when the people around you aren't practicing the same thing. But this is really what the Guru meant. Right in verse 14, the Guru was talking about how this is a difficult path. Guruji said in that verse, "Bhagtan ki chal nirali." The devotee's stride is unique. Chala nirali bhagta keri bikam marg chalana. The unique stride of the devotee is a difficult path to follow. So it's not easy to go against social norms. But when we begin to understand why this is so critical, why is criticizing others so detrimental in our lives, then we may be equipped with the understanding in order to practice this, even though it's not easy. Now let's think about when we criticize someone. Let's think about when we hear negativity about another person. What we don't realize that is happening underneath is when we think about someone else in a negative way, immediately what we do is we're uplifting ourselves. When we criticize or put someone else down, what we do is we raise ourselves up. We make ourselves feel better, because by criticizing someone, what you're unintentionally telling yourself is, well, at least I'm not like that. I'm not as bad as that person. At least I'm better than that. So what you start doing is you start building up your own self-importance. You start creating a superiority for yourself and an inferiority for the other person. Now, you might feel like you're completely justified in pointing out what someone else has done. You might feel like it's totally right to talk about and share when someone does something wrong. But there's a difference. There's a difference between pointing out what someone else has done and saying it in such a way that puts them down and lifts you up. And as soon as we do that, we forget this oneness. We fall back into our own sense of superiority. And this is where the ego is so subtle. It's so difficult to recognize, and what the Guru means by this being a very difficult path. And the Guru's path is encouraging us to always be humble, always be low, always think of ourselves as lower than everyone else, to the point at which we become so low that we dissolve ourselves, dissolve our ego. And the way that the Guru does this is in the previous verse. It says, see the divine in everyone. Now that means see the divine in even the people who are causing harm or doing something wrong. See them as higher and bring yourself as lower, because remember, your own ego is the cause of your own suffering. And the Guru is trying to point out circumstances where you may subtly be bringing your own ego up. And the way you do that is by criticizing others. So in a very simple way, the Guru is saying, don't listen in this particular way. Don't use this as the way in which you navigate through life. So then the logical follow-up question to that is, well, what should we be listening to? Should we just close our ears completely to the world and close our eyes to all the evil that are happening in the world, all the atrocities that are happening? And the Guru answers this question by saying, sunhu satbani, listen to the eternal message. Now, on a very simplistic level, again, some people would interpret this line as saying, don't listen to any criticism, don't even listen to any music or watch any TV or anything like that that brings negativity in your mind. Don't listen to any music apart from the music of the words of Guru Granth Sahib. And there's actually some truth in this. This is actually quite a useful method in order to understand what the changes are that are needed inside you. You begin to now question, what are the practices that I'm doing around me? Now, I'm not saying that everybody should stop listening to all music or anything like that, but understand what the truth is behind these practices. That there is a deeper essence, and once you understand the deeper essence, that's the most important thing. It's not about whether you're listening to some music or not, but it's about whether you understand it. Because there will be those people who say, well, we don't listen to anything, we only ever listen to Gurbani, we only ever listen to the spiritual music of the Sikh tradition. But then they haven't reflected on themselves at a deeper level. They may still be going out there and still criticizing others, putting others down, never really understanding their own ego. And in that case, the Guru will say, well, you haven't really passed the test. You haven't really understood what the purpose of this practice is. So when Guru says sunhu satbani, there's a deeper meaning here. And the deeper meaning is to replace your worldly perspective with the divine perspective. Replace your view of the world as something which is for your gain, for pleasure, for likes and dislikes, for duality. Let's get rid of all of that maya. Let's get rid of that way of understanding the world and understand the permanence behind it. Understand the sach, the satbani, the ultimate truth that underpins everything. So the Guru is encouraging us to listen to the world through divine ears. We have to listen with awareness that we are listening to the sound of God at every moment. We are listening to the divine music, the divinity at every moment. And so even the ones who are speaking negatively, even those people who are acting out of their own ego, we have to be aware that those are the divine, but they're unconscious, they're unaware. Can you recognize it? And even when they're speaking negatively of someone, the one that's being spoken negatively of, that's also the divine. So the Guru is now reprogramming the way that we interact with the world, the way that we think, and the way that we listen to the things around us. The Guru is asking you to recognize this oneness. Recognize that some people are speaking unconsciously. Recognize that other people are acting unconsciously. But don't you get involved at that level. You should elevate yourself spiritually so that you can recognize the game that's being played in front of you. And so this brings an interesting question around what are specific behaviors that we can do to start practicing what the Guru is actually teaching. How do we actively achieve this? Now, the Guru is asking you to be aware, be alert of anything, any conversations, any thoughts that are going to make you forget this oneness, that are going to induce this duality inside you. In verse 24, we heard about this idea of kachi banee. The Guru said, Bani ta kachi Satguru bajaho hor kachi banee. A message is false without the true Guru. All other messages are false. Kehende kache, sunde kache, kachi aankh vakhani. False are those who speak it, false who hear it, false are those who recite and explain it. So the Guru is starting to make you aware of falsehood all around you. But that falsehood comes from within you first. First, get rid of your false way of thinking, of seeing duality and differences, and understand the underpinning sat, the underpinning true banee that is being spoken at every moment. So treat falsehood, the wrong way of looking at the world, as poison to your ears, and make a decision. Remember, we're talking about what are the practical steps that we can do. One of the first things that you can do is make a decision not to let negativity into your mind, not to let falsehood fester within you. And by falsehood, we mean much more than just cruelty or negative speech. What we mean is anything that takes your awareness away. Anything that makes you forget the oneness, be aware of those. Be alert. Be alert that this is what's happening to you. Be alert that you're falling back into the trap of your own ego. So we can't close our ears to the world. We can't even stop ourselves necessarily from hearing all the conversations that are happening that may be of a negative nature. But there are some practical things that we can do. You can try to avoid actively participating in conversations that are negative, in conversations that are criticizing another person, even if they've done something wrong, even if you believe that they have done something wrong. Avoid getting into conversations where you are criticizing someone else, especially behind people's back. And it's not going to be easy to do this because our society is rife with this. But on a deeper level, the Guru is asking us to apply this filter of the Guru's mindset. You know, in the early to mid 90s, within Christian communities, there was a really popular phrase that came about, which was, what would Jesus do? And it's actually based on a book written in the 1890s, about 100 years prior to that, called In His Steps by Charles Sheldon. And that book tells a story of a church minister where he challenges his congregation and he says to them, for one whole year, don't do any action without first asking this question, what would Jesus do? And it had such a profound effect on people. This book was taught and translated and shared all over the world because it had such a profound way of making people self-reflect. And the Guru is asking you constantly to self-reflect. Ask yourself this question, how does my Guru nature respond to this moment? How does the Guru within me want me to act? What are the higher values? What are the higher qualities that I can display in this moment? How should I act? So that's something for us to reflect on at every moment. And I really love this phrase, what would Jesus do? What would the highest version of me do? What would the Guru within me do? And so we need to now begin to understand that there are certain rules about how to live with life. And that is, negativity and bliss can't exist in the same space. If you are engaging in conversations that are about criticizing, that are about creating divisions, me and them, I'm better than them, don't worry, we're not like those people. As soon as you create those, you're creating falsehood. You're creating a false narrative in your mind that there is a separation in the world, that there are differences, and you're forgetting the underpinning truth. As soon as you enter into that false Maya level and you only engage with the world on that temporary level, you forget the truth, then you've gone into negativity. And negativity and that falsehood is not where bliss lies. Bliss lies in that underlying truth. And so that's this rule that you have to understand, that negativity and bliss cannot exist in the same space. So as long as the events of the world are being interpreted in your mind into negativity, as long as you're hearing circumstances as negative, then you can't be in bliss. That's just a simple truth that we need to start programming our minds to understand. This is how it works. If there are any circumstances in life that leave you feeling sad, feeling threatened, feeling angry, feeling divisive or superior, feeling resentful, then you've heard those circumstances wrong. You've incorrectly interpreted those. You've misrepresented the event in your mind. And the Guru says, sunhu satbani. Can you hear the truth at each moment? Can you experience the bliss even now when you are faced with adversity, when you're faced with troubles, when you're confronted with a problematic view of the world, when somebody is trying to bring you down into this negative way of thinking by engaging in this negative talk? Can you remember the bliss? Can you re-listen and reinterpret at that moment? Can you listen to that moment in a different way? Can you find the universal perspective, the divine godly perspective in that moment? Because if you do, the Guru goes on to say, Jit suni man tan harya hua, rasnaa ras samaanee. Hearing this, the mind and body blossom and the tongue enjoys the flavor. Because if you are in negativity, you won't be in bliss. If you reinterpret every moment through this eternal truth of oneness, then you will reside in bliss, because bliss lives with that ultimate truth. Joy now becomes a way of you testing yourself. If you're in bliss, that is the gauge, that's the measure, that's how you test yourself. Am I in positivity, or have I gone into the falsehood? Have I gone into the negative way of looking at life? Have I gone into the temporary ego way of looking at life, of interpreting the world through the lens of my own ego? And the Guru is saying, use joy, bliss as your test, to constantly test yourself. Does your bliss last, or does it fall? Do you fall back into negativity? Do you unconsciously fall back into your old ways, into your ego? Guru Arjan Dev Ji has a beautiful shabad that says, Har kirtan sunai, har kirtan gaave, tis jan dukh nikat nahi aave. By listening to the divine praises, by singing divine praises, such a person does not let suffering come close. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are you ready to live like this? Are you ready to feel this bliss at all times? Or do you quite like that negativity? Because if you like it, if you like feeling superior by putting someone else down, if you like interpreting the world as good or bad, then don't be surprised when sometimes you feel good, but sometimes you're going to feel bad. Don't be surprised that you've jumped onto this roller coaster that has its ups and its downs. Either you get on the roller coaster and you go with the whole ride, or you just go with the ups and the downs. Or the Guru is saying you can stand back and you can just be in this neutral space. And the Guru is saying in this line, this quote, Har kirtan sunai, har kirtan gaave. Those who listen to the divine praise, tis jan dukh nikat nahi aave. They never feel suffering. So you have to ask yourself, is that me? How many times have I listened to kirtan? How many times have I listened to divine praise, divine words, the spiritual teachings, but I've not experienced everlasting bliss? I keep going back into my ego. Why is that? Is there something wrong with the spiritual teachings? Am I not listening correctly? And the Guru is saying that you have not learnt how to listen to them. You've not learnt how to use this medicine of the spiritual wisdom, of the kirtan, of the Guru's words. You don't know how to apply it. You're listening to it, but on a very superficial level. You need to listen deeply so that it really penetrates in your mind. Listen so that it actually starts to make sense to you. I need to change. Something in me needs to change. Something in me needs to become better. And these are the practical steps that the Guru is saying. We need to understand that my mind needs to be transformed. I can't keep doing the same old things and expecting a new outcome. Because kirtan, as the Guru is saying, can transform you. But what kirtan is the Guru talking about? The reality is, when the Guru says, sunhu satbanee, listen to the ultimate truth, the ultimate message, the reality is kirtan is happening all around you all the time. The only thing that's stopping you from hearing this kirtan, this divine praise, is your misguided interpretation of the world, your expectations of life, your thinking that you need to constantly desire things. You're always looking for other tastes, other flavors. Remember in verse 32, we talked about anaras. You're always desiring more flavors, other things. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, at this moment, can I be desireless? Can I want nothing out of this moment? Can I just be content with the moment as it is, no matter what the situation is? Because the situation on the outside can't be changed, but the situation on the inside can be improved. So as long as you are desiring another flavor, you're missing the sweetness that exists in this moment. As long as you desire another sound, another outcome of life, if you want this particular moment to feel slightly different, then you're missing the melody that exists right now. And our mind is constantly doing this. Our mind is constantly trying to improve the situation. I think about myself when I go to the supermarket or the grocery store. If I stand in a queue and I'm waiting for my turn to pay for the items at the till, my mind is not at rest. I'm always looking around, trying to see why are the other tills free? Why is that queue shorter than mine? How do I make this situation better? And really, that's what our mind does at every single moment. At every moment, your ego is saying, can't this be better? Can't we do something better? Your ego doesn't know how to live in peace in this moment. It's always trying to improve it because it thinks if it improves, I'll be happier. You know, if I go to a shorter till, I feel a little bit pleased with myself. If I find a queue that's a little bit shorter and I can get to the till quickly, I feel a little bit pleased with myself. But that's not true happiness. True happiness is, what if there was no other queue? What if there's no other alternative? Can I still be happy? Can I be in my bliss? Can I interpret this moment as a melody rather than as a tragedy? And that's a question that you have to ask yourself. So as long as you're interpreting this moment through your false ears, listening to the situation and interpreting it as negative, then you're going to be miserable. You're going to live in misery. That is literally how you plant the seeds of misery. And the solution is to completely let go, to hear the music, to hear the joy and the beauty of this very moment, whatever the situation. And when you do, the Guru says, man tan harya hoa. Hearing this, the mind and body blossoms. Look at this word harya. All throughout Anand Sahib, the Guru has used the word hari, har, the divine, the flowering, the blossoming one. And when you connect with the divine, how you know that you've connected is your mind begins to blossom. You are harya, you are flowering. And the Guru is talking about the flowering mind. Such a person who listens to life in this way is blossoming. Their mind is flowering at all times. So how do you know that you're connecting with the divine? We like to think that divine is another person, something else, and I need to become a different person. I need to no longer feel like me, and I need a new character to enter my mind. And how many times have you tried this and you'll realize that's just not possible? This character needs to become divine. This character needs to have divine qualities. The same me that you've walked around with, the one that's looking at life in this miserable way and always interpreting things as to how do I benefit from this and how do I run away from that. The same me now has to be flowering, sees flowering at every moment, has a blossoming mind, Hariya mind. That's how you know you're connecting with the divine. When all aspects of you are now flowering, you are in peace, in bliss at every moment. And if you're like this, Guru says, rasnaa ras samaanee. The tongue enjoys the flavor. Your mind is flowering and your body acts from this flowering mind. Your body is now acting out of this joy, out of this peace. Blissful, joyful words will flow out of your mouth and your tongue will enjoy the flavor of life. And this is why the Guru has gone through all of these different senses. Oh my body, oh my tongue, oh my eyes, oh my ears. Every single one of them needs to be transformed, but they're all they're all entry points into the mind. And the mind is the one that needs to be changed. When you do, the Guru says, sach, alakh, vidaanee, haqiqat kahee na jaa-ay. This invisible truth is glorious. Its status cannot be described. There are no words to describe what this state is like. Somebody who's in this state is not able to transfer that feeling to you without you first having that transformation within yourself. They can tell you. You might think that you're experiencing it, but when you begin to experience it, you realize this is something more than anything external that I've ever received. And the Guru is saying, when I listen to this Satbanee, when I listen to this Naam, then I am experiencing something that's beyond words. Haqiqat kahee na jaa-ay. And we begin to understand Naam is not a word. Naam can begin as a word, but the experience of Naam is more than a word itself. It is the system of the universe itself that you are in complete unison with. You're flowing with the river rather than swimming against the current. You are in flow with this beautiful flow of life itself. And this is where it cannot be described. This is the Guru saying, this is the hukum. You are in alignment with hukum. Right at the beginning of Japji Sahib, at the very beginning of Sikh thought, the Guru said, hukum razai chalana, go with the flow of life. But how do we do this? The Guru's message needs to be heard daily. It's so easy for us to fall back into our egos. And in order to stop our mind retracting back to its ego self, back to the old ways, we need to expose ourselves to this Guru's words all the times. It's really interesting that in this line, the Guru says that the truth is invisible, uses this word alakh. That's it. You can't see it, it's invisible. And yet in the last verse, the Guru was saying, see it everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So how can we see something everywhere that's invisible? And what the Guru is saying is we've spent so long in our ego mind that the Guru's words really become a lifeline for us. The Guru shows us a new way, stops us from drowning, because it's too easy to forget. This truth, in one way, is completely invisible. Our mind is darkened. We can't see this. It's so difficult to see. But with the Guru's words, we can begin to see it. We can begin to understand. You can start to focus on seeing life in this particular way and not be lost in the maya of the world. Because this divine is something that is not physical. The physical world is there, but the truth is something that's very subtle. It is a sach, it is a permanence, it is invisible, alakh, and it is this miraculous vidaanee, this beautiful miraculous thing. And the Guru is saying time and time again that don't get lost in the world. Yes, try to see it everywhere. Yes, recognize it in yourself, recognize it in everything else, but also recognize that what you're seeing is the superficial layer of truth. The truth is something that's underneath it. What you're seeing is the effect of hukum. You're seeing all the forms that this underlying truth is able to create. But the underlying truth is an essence. It's beyond all forms. Because if you get trapped in form, then you get trapped back into your own form, and no form lasts forever. Nothing that's been created will last, because everything will be destroyed. Even the galaxies and the stars and the planets and solar systems and all these things, they all had a creation and they're all eventually going to die out. So what you're focusing on is something that's beyond that. It's not the ultimate truth unless you see the subtle essence that's behind it all. Everything is infused with this divine flavor. Everything has the divine sound ringing at all times. The question the Guru is asking you is, can you hear it? Can you hear it ringing at all times? And in the last line, the Guru says, kahee Nanak, amrit Naam, sunhu, pavitar hovhu, saachai sunne no pathaa-ay. Says Nanak, hear the nectar-like name. Become pure. The Eternal has sent you here to listen. In the earlier lines, the Guru has said, listen to the Satbani, the true message. Here it's saying, listen to the amrit Naam, to the nectar-like name. In verse 23, we talked about amrit being something that we have to drink. So what's the Guru doing? The Guru is engaging every single one of your senses and saying, however you understand this, with whatever example that makes sense to you, engage all of your senses and engage with this Naam, interact with this Naam. Taste it, see it, hear it, feel it, touch it, smell it. It's in every single part of you. Let this Naam in through whichever sense you need. Let it in so that it may cleanse you. It may clear the fog of your mind, and so that you may become pavitar. The line says, pavitar hovhu. Purify yourself. The Guru is saying, free yourself from your impurity, from your impurity of selfhood, of self-importance. Let go of this idea of ownership and put down this baggage. Let go of all the baggage that you're carrying. Because the truth is, as I alluded to right at the beginning of this verse, was that we're all living in our own worlds. We all have our own mental worlds. We all have our own way of interpreting life. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what kind of world do I want to live in? Because everyone is focused on fixing the outer world. But this question is really about, what kind of mind do I want to live in? What kind of inner world do I want to cultivate, where no matter what's happening on the outside, the inner world is able to deal with it. The inner world is tidied up. We talked about decluttering before we let the divine come in and lie on our bed. Before the divine can come, the husband can come marry the bride has to clean her surroundings and make it a space to welcome the divine. Can you clear the clutter of your inner world? And the question is, what kind of inner world do you want to live in? Because you're not here to live out your fantasies. You're not here to control life. You're not here to just gain as much material wealth and possessions as you can. You're here to retrain your mind. You're here to look at life in a different way, because you can't control the outside world, but you can retrain your mind. You're here to enjoy the music that's happening right now. This is what you were made for. This is how you experience peace and bliss. Answer the following questions either by writing them down or discussing them in your groups. What is your understanding of falsehood or negative thinking? How will you improve the way your mind perceives life and other people? How does your current mindset prevent you from experiencing bliss? In what ways is listening to the Guru's teachings impacting your daily life?